After this year's February 25th presidential elections in Nigeria, famed writer and thought leader Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie penned an open letter to America's President Joe Biden, expressing her dismay at the congratulatory message that the US government shared with the election's winning candidates. The elections played out in such a way that it created an environment whereby, in Chimamanda's words, quote, "The discontent, the despair, the tension in the air have not been this palpable in years," quote. Chimamanda goes on to chastise, quote, American intelligence, quote, by stating that it, quote, "surely cannot be so inept. A little homework and they would know what is manifestly obvious to me and so many others. The process was imperiled not by technical shortcomings but by deliberate manipulation," quote. The 2023 presidential elections that took place in early February have been dubbed by many as a scandalous and unjust political event, with the ruling party capturing power through reported intimidation of voters, interference in voting processes, and the manipulation of results. There was, though, an unlikely victory in Lagos, where Peter Obi, who ran for the Labour Party, beat the candidate running for the ruling party. Peter Obi has been pedestaled as a breath of fresh air in Nigeria, appealing to the imagination of a Nigeria free of corruption and held together by systems and processes of political accountability. Chimamanda's open letter also makes mention of Peter Obi, describing that, quote, "Nigerian democracy had long been a two-party structure, power alternating between the APC and the People's Democratic Party, until this year, when the Labour Party, led by Peter Obi, became a third force. Obi was different. He seemed honest and accessible, and his vision of anti-corruption and self-sufficiency gave rise to a movement of supporters who called themselves Obedience," quote. From 1884 to 1960, Nigeria existed under the colonial rule of the British Empire. After becoming an independent republic in 1963, 3 years later, Nigeria would experience a civil war known famously as the Biafra War, after which the Nigerian government established military rule in 1970, lasting until 1999. Political power has circulated amongst the same network of economic and political oligarchs since then. This is reflected in that there have only been two parties vying for power and occupying political positions since 1999. This culture of politics speaks to a militarization of politics, whereby power belongs to a few and society is organized under the desires and mercy of these few. The Nigeria we know today is a product of various forms of militarized trauma, from colonial administration, civil war, and a military government. Peter's emergence as an alternative voice that advocates for power to people with language like, quote, "It's time to take our country back," or, quote, "This election is the old against the new," as he stated to the BC, sounds and feels exciting to a population of young people who feel marginalized from the arena of political decision-making in their country. Though, does Peter Obi embody a vision and political practice that could transform Nigeria into a country that uses its incredibly rich natural resources and the wealth that it produces to provide its 200+ million population with lives of economic safety, stability, and dignity? And what is it exactly that has captured the country, particularly the youth, about Peter Obi's political work? Perhaps Peter Obi reflects the hope that something unfamiliar and novel will mean that the ways of old will not repeat themselves. An organizer and mobilizer of the End SARS campaign, a protest movement that 2 years ago successfully disbanded a policing unit reputed for committing state violence against civilians, is one of Peter Obi's supporters, helping raise millions of naira within weeks for Obi's campaign. In an article written by the BBC, Mr. Okundayo is quoted as saying, quote, "Which Nigerian politician has ever held office and has its integrity intact? I do not see any other logical option for young people in Nigeria," quote. Though Peter is not entirely a newcomer to Nigeria's political world. Serving as a governor from 2017 to 2014 in the state of his birth, Anambra State, as a member of the ruling party, and with a net worth of 10 million USD, Peter is well and truly part of the political and economic elite of Nigeria. His political mandate in the 2023 elections, focusing in on cracking down on corruption, feels misplaced, given that, according to the BBC, his name appeared in the leaked Pandora Papers and he has been accused of using state funds to invest in a company he had dealings with. If Obi has an ambiguous relationship to holding himself to the standards of political and financial accountability that he is preaching will become the institutional standard if elected, and if he is a far cry from a reflection of an everyday working-class Nigerian civilian, then what has enabled him to dominate the imagination of Nigeria's youth when they envision radical change. Perhaps it is the hope that Obi may be the one to turn the militarized state culture of punishment and violence in the name of order and structure inward, away from the people and instead towards targeting the political class. Perhaps young people want to see the people who have systemically robbed them and their country for years experience consequences, and maybe they feel like Obi could be the one to deliver them, given that these people are, in fact, Peter Obi's peers and associates. Whatever the underlying reason behind Obi's large support base, only time will tell if Obi's tenure will look like the hopes that his followers have of him, or if it will look more like the establishment that formed him to begin with.